So The Last of Us is finally here. Kaylee and I sat down and watched episode 1, When You're Lost in the Darkness. So, okay. I do want to say this right out the gate. So, we are massive fans of the game. We played through the first one again just this last week. And we will be discussing spoilers for the entirety of the game, I'm sure. I will pre-warn before we get into the spoiler part, right? But the spoiler part will include, just our guesses based on the game and what we know is going to happen. And since the show and the game are near identical currently, I am assuming all the major plot points and major, big elements are going to remain the same. So if you don't want the future of the show spoiled, then this would definitely be something to avoid once we get to that segment, right?
Yeah.
But so far, let's just talk about it spoiler free, and then we'll get into that. So for those of you who don't know and have not seen the show yet, or have not played the game and know literally nothing about the story, we follow Joel Miller and his daughter Sarah, and they are just kind of living out their normal day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. And there's some reports and some rumblings of something happening, and then all hell breaks loose.
Yes.
Right? And we are faced with a zombie apocalypse of sorts, right? This isn't a traditional classic zombie story, and I think it's very I think it's a bad thing to call it a zombie show, right? Because I think it immediately kind of has a negative connotation attached to it with a lot of people, right? It's a disservice to refer to it as a zombie show. So I do kind of stay away from letting people know that up front.
Sure.
Let it kind of, reveal itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's a better way. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. It is an infected show, but it's very very different than something like The Walking Dead.
Yes,
right?
Definitely.
So then we flash forward some time, and now we're living with these people in war-torn, infected, wasteland. Mm-hmm. And our characters are definitely morally gray. We'll say
Very.
that, and
mm-hmm.
that's a thing that people should know. And I think that if you are someone who's overtly sensitive, this show might not be the best for you, because this show is definitely not something that is going to, put on the gloves and play it safe.
No,
right? Like
definitely.
people are going to die,
Yeah.
No one's safe. I'll just say that.
Nobody's safe. It deals with some really heavy subject matter, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's essentially the setup. So I don't know. Okay, before we get into the spoilers, as a massive game fan of this game, and also just a fan of film and television, like, does this series live up to the hype and what we wanted out of it so far out of episode 1 of 9? Of course, absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, if you saw my post,
100%.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I made a post on Instagram, on Facebook, on everything, just like, oh my God, this is like the perfect adaptation. And when it comes to video game adaptations, right, it's typically not good, right? There's very, very few good adaptations of video games, mm-hmm. and even less great ones. So this was a risky proposition for a lot of gamers. Like, oh my God, this is one of the most beloved stories, the most beloved to us.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, they could fail miraculously on this, and spectacularly, I think is what I meant.
I was gonna say miraculously.
I was like, wait a minute, that didn't come out right.
It was a miracle that they failed.
No.
Yeah, it could have been really bad. And I mean, I know that we have our own preferences for what we wanted, but as far as the adaptation goes, it has the aesthetic of the game, it has the feel, it has like the acting from the the portrayal of the characters so far fits perfectly with the video game characters. So all of that lines up really, really well. And everything that was, nothing was really changed from the beginning of the game. Things were added in for sure, which we'll talk about. But both of us, like, we love what was added, and we think that it adds depth to the story, which is what we want out of the TV show. I mean, we play the game for the story, of course, but also for like the action and the actual like video game component. But you don't get that obviously with a TV show, so we just want more lore and more story to be revealed.
When it comes to video games, you have a very short window of time to do story and cutscenes, right? Like, people are primarily there for the game. They want a story, but they also want to play. Yeah. They don't want to sit there and watch a 30-minute cutscene, right? So you are limited on how long your cutscenes can be before the gamer's like, can I take over control again? Right. Now, personally, myself, I would watch a 30-minute cutscene in a Last of Us game, no questions asked. Right? I wouldn't even blink. I wouldn't even think about it, right? It would just be, I'd be so invested, it would be fine to me. But, I don't think I'm the average gamer in that way with this franchise in particular. So there is a lot of added things here. A lot. I would say this is an hour and 25-minute episode, and I would say half of it at least is additional story content that we've never seen. Yeah. But all of it makes sense. All of it enriches the story, the characters, and the believability of decision making and motives and all of that stuff. So that's where the television show can greatly benefit the overall story. Right? We're very invested in the story as is. But the game is limited because of the time they can spend telling these stories. Like in the beginning, we follow Sarah around for a bit, right? Like 10 minutes or so, just kind of her going through her day, right? It doesn't start at night like the game does. We start during the day, and we really get to see her outside and walking around and interacting with neighbors and stuff like that. And in a game, that would just be very boring to a lot of people. Yeah. And they'd be like, let's get to it already. So this is where the television show does have a great benefit to it. As someone who wants to see more out of this story. And they utilized the space perfectly, right? Like if you take this game, if you take the story of the game, and you lay it down, right, and you see the whole thing as a whole, you can look at where the spaces are. You can see like, okay, we can add here, and we can add here, and all this does is it enriches this scene that comes before it or after it. It expands on this character and their motivations and gives them a more believable, motive or desire or whatever, right? So that's what's been happening so far. It's just it's nothing that takes away from the story we know at all, right? It only enriches it. It only makes it more powerful. And of course we'll discuss those things, but it is. So far, we haven't seen the whole thing yet, right? It's one episode, but it's a very promising start, to say the least. It's a near flawless adaptation. And they added things that I never really thought I would need or want or thought about all that much. But I'm glad to have them.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like I'm just getting a director's cut of the game, right? Just filling in those question marks or those, there's no holes.
But the empty spaces,
sure.
like you said, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I guess it's we can talk spoilers now. So
yeah.
if you're just wanting to hear whether or not it's worth your time, if you're a fan of the games, absolutely. If you're not 100%. A fan of the games, absolutely.
Yes.
We watched this with my father, who knows literally nothing about the game, and I mean literally nothing about it. And he was very into it. Was actually very bummed that he had to wait.
Yes, he was.
For the next week. He's like, I'm not watching it again until it's over. I'm just not gonna wait. That's not true. He'll watch
it with us.
But yeah, he was super into it, and we were more into it because this is our thing.
Right.
So let's talk about spoilers from here. If you haven't seen the show, time to shut it off. But if you have seen the show, we will be spoiling what's going to come, and trust me, the stuff we're going to talk about will come.
It will.
Because of the adaptation thus far, they're not going to change anything major, right? So if you don't want to know what's going to happen in episode 2 through 9, and even beyond, right? Season 2, season 3, if there is one. I guess we should. I guess I'm very hopeful for season 2.
I know.
And I can only imagine it's with as positive as the responses have been.
Yeah.
Right. I have literally not heard a single negative word about the show yet.
Yeah.
So with as positive as the show is right now, especially with the fandom, right? That's what really matters.
Yeah.
Is that if the fandom hates it, they're going to bitch this thing right off the planet.
Right.
Right. This happens all the time.
Of it. Yeah.
Right. Like the people who watch it are important. Don't get me wrong. Like the people who don't know anything about the source material and all that, them watching and tuning in and leaving ratings and all that stuff is important. But they're not gonna cry and bitch and make it their life's mission to get this show canceled off the planet like diehard fans will. Right? So you gotta please the diehards. You just have to. Just look at any IP currently. If you got the fans happy, you're getting tons of content. Mm-hmm. If you piss them off, that content starts to dwindle heavily.
Yes.
So far, so good. So yeah, there you go. Let's talk about spoilers. Where do you want to start?
I mean, we can just, I guess, start in the beginning, maybe. Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, we get a whole day with Sarah before she dies. So that was really great to see, just her going about her daily life and kind of getting these hints of something's up, like with the police cars and the ambulances that are passing, seeing her go into the city, and then later when they're in the car driving and Tommy says that, you know, they think the infection is from the city, and she's worried about it because she went there to fix her dad's watch. All of that was wonderful, and I really like, of course, everything with her neighbor, the older woman that she goes next door to do her homework for, or wait, you know, for Joel to get home, and just like the shot of the neighbor in the background, like freaking out and being weird, but was wonderful and very creepy.
Yeah.
I really liked that, and I actually really like the way that the tendrils look coming out of the mouth of her. So I know that, you know, the spores are no longer a thing in the show.
Yeah.
Which was a big part of the game. Instead, it is supposed to be tendrils, which I want to see more. Like, I want to see how that impacts them. If it's just kind of like an aesthetic, like, you know, the tendrils are coming out of people's mouths and ears or whatever, or if it actually will, like, infect people. Because obviously with the spores, if they breathed it in, it would have infected them. So I'm wondering if they're going to be in an area where there's, like, tendrils that will, like, try and chase after them or something. Especially with the opening sequence of the fungi spreading. I don't know. I just was kind of curious about the opening credits. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how, if they're going to do anything that's like the spores. I mean, why remove them and then put something in just like them?
Well, I think that having the gas mask on Joel might have been something that they wanted to avoid because it would hide that, the actor's face, obviously.
I mean, he's in The Mandalorian.
I know,
and
but
he conveys phenomenal
Yeah.
range and emotion with a mask on. And Ellie doesn't have to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't, and it's mostly Joel and Ellie on their own.
Yeah.
Right? Spoilers for the future episodes. Just a reminder here. Because Tess will be dead probably by the end of the next episode.
Yeah, most likely.
And then it's just going to be Joel and Ellie. I mean, up until they meet up with Sam and Henry, and they'll be dead probably in like one episode.
They'll be with Bill and Frank first. So, they can.
Yeah, how much time we'll actually spend with Bill? I don't know if we'll ever see Bill. I don't know. Have we seen in trailers that they ever actually meet Frank alive? Or is it just Bill and Frank that are having dialogue? Because I want to say we're just going to see some of their backstory.
Maybe it's that.
Then they're going to have like a falling out.
Sure.
Frank will go off to do something. Maybe, locate the battery like he does in the game. I don't know. And then Joel and Ellie will find Bill, and by the time they meet Frank, he'll be dead. He'll have hung himself by that point. I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever see them actually with Frank, unless I'm forgetting that they do meet him in the trailer.
I don't remember them seeing Frank. I just remember seeing Frank by himself, really. Or like talking to Bill. But the shot of him is like him by himself. I'm not sure. I don't know.
My point being is that like Joel, they don't have to put him into spore areas. There's plenty of scenes in the game where they're inside a building, where they're inside a structure, where they're inside or underground or whatever, and there's no spores, right?
Yeah.
The spores are only heavily populated in areas with heavy infection. If somebody, like the scene that we get in this, where the guy is, in the wall.
Which looked wonderful.
Sure, it looks great, right? But that would be an area where the spores would probably be pretty heavy.
Sure.
Right, and that's a place where you'd be like, oh, put on the masks. I don't know if Pedro Pascal was like, I've worn enough masks. I'm not doing that again. Let's cut that from the show. Or if it was a creative decision by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. I don't know. I do wish they did the spores, but it's one of those things where it's like, I don't really care. Like,
I don't think it's
I care.
Sure.
But is it a deal breaker? Am I going to get mad about it? Not at all.
And I don't really care if the tendrils like chase after them or not. I'm just curious if it is going to be utilized in like a similar way, or if it is just like the look of them. But either way, I liked how the neighbor looked because we got a good glimpse of her face.
Yeah.
And then I think after pretty much the rest of our time, there's some things that are changed, like whenever they get into the city and the plane comes down and the plane's engine is what hits their car.
Sure.
That's a little different. But then everything is pretty much the same with Sarah's death. And we get to see Joel working, like, jobs, and also get to see him as a drug dealer, basically.
Right, which is a callback to the line of Sarah saying she sells hardcore drugs. And he responds to her with, like, something along the lines of he does as well. Right. Paraphrasing, I can't remember the exact line, but I thought that was cool to see what Joel does to survive, because him and Tess just kind of being the people they are in the game ain't gonna really get you by, right? You're gonna need ration cards like they show. They're gonna need to play ball to some extent, to keep up appearances, to keep alive. Otherwise, they're going to be noticed to not be helping out, not get enough food, whatever. So, to see Joel and there's so many great additions. So, while watching with my father and Sarah's death happens, he was just like, "They're really killing this little girl right now," and it was like, "Yeah, welcome to The Last of Us." But then, we go 20 years later, and you're thinking we're going right to Joel.
Oh yes, that's right.
Right, and it's like, oh no. We're gonna see this kid.
Yeah.
Who is out in the quarantine zone or the QZ, and he, is brought in by Fedra, and they sit him down and they lull him into this false sense of security and trust. They check him. They show us that the red means infected, right? So that's going to show us later when Ellie's found to be infected. So that's a good way to show us green good, red bad. We all kind of can figure that out on our own, but it's more to send a message, right? That like there's two things being conveyed here. Number one, we're not messing around, right? Like no one's safe in this show. This is not a conventional show in the sense that like kids have plot armor and whatnot. This is HBO, right? This is Game of Thrones style where the kid can be sold out by her father and thrown into a fire or burned at the stake or whatever happens. She's burned at the stake, right? Yeah. Her mom tries to protest at last second, right? Sorry, Game of Thrones. We got two people from Game of Thrones in the show, so I couldn't help but think about it. But it's sending that message of like, we're killing kids.
Yes.
Right? Sarah dies. This nameless kid with the iconic sneakers. he's killed. But then we're also conveying that, this woman who's working the burning pile pits, she still has that, human emotion in her. Like, I care still. Sure. Right? And then this shows that, like, this is a child. Joel, obviously is traumatized by the death of his child. But he's so disconnected at this point. He just grabs the kid, like, kind of like, I'll do it. And just grabs the kid, just, like, very carelessly throws the kid into the fire. There's no emotion from him at all in that scene. He doesn't even blink that it's a kid. He just grabs it, throws it in the fire. It's just another body to him.
Yeah, and
right?
he's very hardened and desensitized to everything. And of course it also shows that there's no, like, if you're infected, you're dead. Like, you don't have any choice, if you're, either you turn or you die, right? So. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have no chance. Once you turn, you're screwed. Although, we do show in this show, which I thought was really cool, and it does make sense, right? So we see an infected chart, and it tells us that if you get a neck, face, or head bite, that you have about 5 to 10 minutes to turn, right? If you get it on the arms or the chest, you have a couple hours, right? If you get it in the legs, it can take like 10 hours or whatever. I'd have to look at the chart, but it's something along those lines. And then we get to see there's a couple random pedestrians that are just hanging out, sitting down, and they're limbless. Their legs have been severed and cut off. And this suggests to us that, the cordyceps fungal infection has to make its way up your body. Right, the closer it is to the brain, which is what it controls and infects, the quicker it takes over your body. But if you were to be bit on the foot, you could amputate the foot. Now, this, of course, is a pretty common trope that we see in zombie films. That being said, this one actually makes a little more sense because in typical zombie films, it is through the blood, right? Where it's immediately coursing through your veins, and your body is pumping blood through your body very fast, right? Like it's going from your legs down, up. You'd have to cut off your arm and your leg pretty fast to stop it in the blood. But a fungal infection, that would actually take time to creep up your bodies and through your cells and everything. That you could catch, right? Like we saw this in Day of the Dead. We've seen this in The Walking Dead. We've seen this in other places, right? Like the let's chop the limb off, Dead Alive or Brain Dead. Peter Jackson's Brain Dead, right? You see this all the time. If you can cut off the wound fast enough and catch it in time, this makes perfect sense, right? For the fungal infection. So I do like to see limbless people. I do like to see a chart where it kind of gives you an idea of how much time you have. So that's new to the game story, and something I really loved, an exploration of the added stuff, right?
Yeah, I loved that too, and I hope that we can see more of those kinds of like charts and little things that give us like a deeper understanding of the cordyceps virus.
Yeah. We have some things to definitely geek out about here. I had said before there are certain things that I'm gonna like freak about, that like if you haven't played the games, you're not gonna give a shit. You're not gonna know even what you're looking at. You're not gonna geek out in the slightest, right? All sorts of things like the Savage Starlight comic, like I had said, or Dawn of the Wolf poster, or Riley and Ellie in the mall. We know the photo booth scene's happening, so that's good. So will we see them in a Halloween store? Will we see Skeleseer? Will we see,
the joke book?
Man, no pun intended. That book? Yeah, stuff like that. Like that would be.
Great.
But we did get some. We got Sarah's shirt.
Yes.
Is exactly the same one that she's wearing. We get verbatim dialogue, which was wonderful to hear. I sell hardcore drugs and that stuff was great. The dialogue between Ellie and Joel while he's on the couch, and it's like you'll figure that out. And your watch is broken and that kind of stuff. Great stuff to see, and just definitely there for the fans. Ellie's backpack, Joel's backpack, their outfits, right? All that stuff. The opening dialogue from Joel in the kitchen is almost like, did Troy Baker do that? Right? I know it's not, but it sounds
His
so
voice
much.
is so perfect.
He doesn't sound exactly like Joel throughout.
No.
Right? When he yells or anything like that, it definitely is different. But when he's doing his like more low voice, and he's in the kitchen and he's just kind of like talking shit with his daughter, that is when it's like we were looking at each other like, that is Joel. That's Troy Baker. That's crazy close.
Really great, like southern drawl for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're right. When he yells, it's not the same sounding, but it's still just like it doesn't matter. He does it. It's perfect. I think for his rendition of it. We also forgot to mention the opening. Actually flash back to this, what is it, the 60s?
1960s.
Yeah.
4, 7, 8, I don't know.
Which was nice. It sets the tone, for the show, and it's cool to get that kind of. I mean, I don't know who that person was or anything. I don't know if that's going to come up later.
No, I doubt
at all. But
just to set a stage.
But it did a good job at that. Another thing that got changed was that Robert dies.
Tess doesn't shoot him.
She doesn't shoot him.
Right. They have a firefight with the Fireflies after a deal goes wrong, and they're trying to sell them a battery, which has changed. Right. A deal goes wrong between Tess and Robert for a shipment of guns that they want, and Marlene intercepts those and buys them from Robert before Joel and Tess can get them, and then Tess kills Robert and goes after Marlene, but Marlene is shot and is like, I'll give them to you, and this and that. And these are such minor changes. This is
it's
when Tess goes off, like while Joel's sleeping, she doesn't go off to check on the guns. She goes off to check the places where they can go out tonight. Like it's super small, stupid little things like that. Those are minor changes that who cares?
No, we're not griping about them at all. It's just that we noticed them, obviously.
Of course.
And it totally makes sense. I mean, Joel's motivation for wanting the car battery to go after Tommy, and then of course the Fireflies need the car battery because they're trying to take Ellie.
Yes.
It fits perfectly, and it's totally fine.
But it also gives more motivation for Joel to want to go out there.
Yes.
Right? He wants to find his brother.
Right.
His brother has been missing for weeks. It's never been longer than a day that they communicate with one another. He thinks that there's something going on with his brother. Now, whether or not his brother and him are estranged, he does say specifically, like, you're the one that, like, took my brother away, or like radicalized my brother,
Sure,
or whatever the
yeah.
hell he says to Marlene, right? Like, but in the game, right, he tells Ellie, like, the last time I saw him, he was like, I don't want to ever see your goddamn face again.
Right.
Right. So, like, are they estranged? Or Joel seems to be going after him like everything's hunky dory. They're communicating with one another, and then Tommy goes radio silent. But it gives a lot of motivation for Joel outside of Ellie, which is great.
I think that, so because in the opening too, we also get a call from Tommy because he's in jail for the night.
Yep.
And so I think that their relationship, like Joel going after him, is kind of a similar thing like that. Like, I have to go help him.
Right. This
like
is
younger
my
brother.
This is my role as the older brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Tommy in jail thing is a great addition, because now we know why Joel would leave on his birthday.
Right.
And leave his daughter alone.
Yeah.
And then come back. And of course that scene's a little different, right? Like,
sure.
Joel comes into the house and the neighbor comes to the window, as opposed to them out in their truck. But this just streamlines it a little more. Let's get him in the car.
Yeah.
And then the truck scene is perfection. This is like absolutely the best way they could have done it for a Gainem adaptation, and also the heightening of tension of just like, what is going on? That shit was tense as hell.
Super tense. And yeah, it was perfect. There was some shot for shot recreations in the car scene, which was just so cool.
Sure.
So cool.
Because in the game, you're from Sarah's perspective, and you have the ability to look this way, that way, right? You see the neighbor's house on fire. You see the people that are like asking to get in the car. Joel tells them to drive on. All those things are recreated. Yes, the plane crash is new. Yes, them trying to drive off the road and running into the soldiers, cars all lined up, and all the cars. I love the trucks like following them. Like we're
they know where they're going.
Yeah,
we're gonna go after them too.
They got a good idea.
Yeah.
Let's follow them, and some of them drive forward, and of course Joel and Tommy, which we find out are like vets, right?
Yeah.
At least Tommy is. They have different plans. They go off, but that whole scene in the city when everything's falling apart is done as good as it could have been.
So good and so scary. Like,
yes.
Just very terrifying to think, and like everyone running everywhere and people trying to drive, and just the chaos was like, yeah.
And Sarah's death is like exact and perfect. Like him calling her baby girl is so big, right? Because of what happens later with Ellie. And the first time he calls her baby girl is like when he's fully in, right? He's finally given in to like, I love this girl. I'm starting to kind of see her as my adopted daughter now. Like, it is that crossover. So them putting a baby girl in, we'll definitely hear it again with Ellie later on when he is all in on her. So great stuff there. And then, yeah, I mean, we haven't...
I have to get water.
That's okay. We still haven't really discussed Ellie, right? And that's huge, right? So Bella Ramsey is introduced here. Now, Kaylee and I had hypothesized back when we were watching the trailer and talking about the show that, you know, the show would end with Sarah's death. It made the most sense of like sending a message and kind of ending on that, you know, having, so to speak, like a cold opening and leaving it off on like, whoa, this show. But I think they made a good choice of kind of putting that like somewhere around the halfway point or even a little before, because you need to show what this show's really about. And the 20 years later in a completely different landscape with completely different characters, outside of Joel, would be a hard thing to all of a sudden swallow after waiting a week.
Yeah.
So I think it is a smart play to kill Sarah off much earlier than anticipated. But in the game, I mean, this is a much longer version than we get in the game. And if you had done it just like the game, it would have been like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So they added a lot, and it still only kept her alive for like 30 minutes out of an hour and 25-minute episode. But Bella Ramsey, I mean,
She's so perfect and adorable.
Pedro Pascal. I mean, we just talked about him. You know, we discussed his portrayal of Joel enough. Ellie, we did not. And man, just
the
snarkiness,
yeah.
right? The attitude.
The attitude, for sure.
She has it
nailed
down.
It.
Perfect.
Yes.
Right? Like that's it. While we were watching it, I kept saying to Kaylee, I said it, I think 3 times throughout the show. I said, that's Joel.
Yeah.
That's Tess.
Uh-huh.
And that's Ellie.
Yes.
You know, there was just moments where I was like, that's them.
Yeah.
Like they got it.
Perfectly captured.
They know how to do it. They got this. Like that's Joel to me now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I'm in. I'm accepted.
Yeah.
You know, he's won me over. He gets it. I know that he gets it. And I know that for the rest of the show, he gets it.
Right.
Right? I don't have to worry about Joel anymore. I don't have to worry about Tess anymore. I mean, Tess will only probably be alive for one more episode, but she's still Tess. Yeah. Like the shit she says, the stuff she does. Like, and with Tess, it was like when she's
like, I promised Robert that you wouldn't hurt him, but I really want you to hurt him.
Yeah, I want you to hurt him. Like that. I was like, oh, that's.
I was like, yes, right? And everything with their relationship too, I think is like, because we don't really get a lot of that at all in the game. And kind of seeing her come into bed after Joel's taken like a bunch of drinks and some pills, some type of painkiller or whatever. Yeah, but it's like they're not really like super connected. You know, there is that space between them because they are both kind of like, you know, they're hardened and living in this reality and they don't really want the connection as much.
But he cares about her.
But he does care about her.
Absolutely.
And, but I just liked seeing more of their relationship. But Bella Ramsey as Ellie was like, she totally nailed it. Yes. And it's like, she does a perfect job at, as you were saying, like the snarkiness and the attitude. But that also is so clearly like, it is her personality, but in some ways it is also like a defense mechanism because she's scared. Like she is at the end of the day still just a kid, yes. You know, in this world and having to deal with like a lot of stuff all at once. And so I just appreciate that she's able to really balance the like excitement of like, oh, I get to go outside and be, you know, outside the QZ now, but then also, you know, that she's terrified as well.
Yeah, there's nobody yet. And I've seen most of them from the trailer, so I have a pretty good gauge of what's to come. But there's no one yet that is a character that we know from the games that we spend some actual time with that isn't near perfect, right? Like the casting and the direction and the fact that, you know, some of them were told, anyone who hadn't played the game or know anything about the story, they were like, don't play. You know, I don't want you to. But even with that, they're still capturing it exactly. So I don't know what to attribute that to. I know Bella Ramsey said, like, I watched gameplay secretly. They told me not to, but I did anyway, which is a very Ellie thing to do. Yeah. So, like, that alone makes me go, yeah, she's Ellie. But just, yeah, there's so many great things with Ellie. The switchblade scene on the ground under Joel's foot, that interaction with them to show, you know, the disconnection with them, and it's a great introduction to them. Yeah. But it really, you know, perfectly embodies Ellie. And also, you know, the counting to 10 with the, you know, fuck you at the end. Yeah. And you've got, you know, as you said, her excitement when she's outside. Right. You've got, you know, these really great moments. Probably my favorite is the one where she fakes that a distress call came through the radio and just quotes some random 80s song. You know,
just wake me up.
Yeah, George Michael. What's the band? Why am I blanking on this right now? George Michael's band.
Isn't it Wham?
Wham, thank you. I was like, why am I blanking on this?
I don't know.
Yeah, Wham.
Yeah, the fact that she figures out that 80s Music is Trouble. It's so cute and just like, you know, she's smart and Joel like sees it and it's like, oh my god, like I fell for that. Like she actually tricked me and it's great. Their dynamic is already developing into like what we see in the in the game, you know, and that's wonderful.
Yeah. Now Kaylee had said that maybe we're gonna go back and rewatch this because I gotta say she had said that she heard a little bit of like music or a sound effect,
some sound effects
that mirrored or resembled the sound of. So when you're playing the game and you are like crouched down and there's enemies around, if they spot you or if they start to spot you is really what the sound is. You like put your head up and then they start to look at you. It gives you that like sound.
It's an audio
like
cue.
Swelling, swelling audio, like they're about to see you, so get out of sight, or like, hey, there's someone seeing you that you can't see, and then you're like, what? And you put your head down and it's still going and you're like, shit, where are they?
What's happening? You freak out.
So she said she heard that before the Fedra agent guy who Joel sold drugs to earlier.
I thought I did.
Before he sees them, he kind of starts to look over and she thought she heard this
I thought I did.
If that's there, that would be so cool.
We're going to rewatch it. It wasn't like exactly the sound effect from the game. It was just, it reminded me of it, whatever happened there, so we'll see.
I did not notice it, but man, that would be so cool. I don't want it to happen every time. But one time would be freaking awesome.
Yeah. And then we both really love Joel's, you know, him facing the Fedra agent who has the gun and the light, and
this
Ellie's behind him.
Addition.
The mirroring between what happened with Sarah and him, as you said, finally getting the strength to do what he couldn't in the past and attacking the Fedra agent and saving them. Yeah, really great addition. Really, really great. And I like that we're seeing that Joel does have PTSD from losing his daughter. I mean, I'm sure tons of people in this world have PTSD from something, but it would just be a horrible thing that you have to live with, and I'm glad that we're getting that.
All I can say is I'm so excited to be discussing this. I'm so excited that we got to watch the episode. I'm so excited that this exists. I'm so excited. Period.
Yes, period.
Right? Like,
so excited.
This is a treat. And I don't think that in this modern time, with as much content as constantly being dumped on us from, you know, intellectual properties that we are attached to, whether it be comic books, video games, novels, you know, board games, whatever. Like every single thing seems to be getting adaptations these days, and a lot of them are super high quality. Like there's some that are not, right? And that's always going to be the case. There's always going to be bad movies, bad adaptations, all these kinds of things. But we, right now, in 2023, we are starting to really get some phenomenal adaptations of stuff that, you know, I think that we take for granted a little bit.
Yeah.
And I just want to kind of take a second to shine a little bit of a spotlight on the fact that we are very lucky to be getting something like this, to be getting these adaptations from people who are not only like great filmmakers like Craig Mazin, who did Chernobyl, which is one of the greatest shows I've ever watched in my life, and we were so blessed that a video game adaptation, you got to remember back to like Super Mario Brothers days, right? Or Double Dragon or whatever. They made these things purely for money, right? Purely for money. They just hired some whoever the hell, and they made them go, you know, like, here's some money, you know, make something competent enough that we can throw it out into theaters and people can enjoy it, right? And we got those things, and they're pretty terrible. But like nowadays, we're actually getting someone like Craig Mazin, right, who directed and created one of the most well-regarded and well-received series of all time. Like a video game adaptation was given given a creator and a director that had worked on previously, his most recent previous effort was like literally the most well received show of that year. And I don't know if people really understand how insane that actually is, that video games and comic book movies and stuff like that are getting insane talent thrown at them.
Yes.
They're not just throwaway things anymore.
Right.
Yes, there's always a desire for monetary compensation.
Yeah.
Right? Or to get your money back, right? The producers want a return, of course. If you invested in something, you would as well.
Yeah.
But they're really putting, like, they brought Neil Druckmann, the co-creator of the freaking Last of Us, in to work on this, right? The guy behind the game, to work with one of the great television creators to bring us this incredibly immersive and ultimately near perfect adaptation. So I just wanted to say that because I think it's important that we're starting to really see a focus on the fans and what people truly want to see, and it seems like studios are genuinely starting to care about source material. They're we have Mike Flanagan working potentially on The Dark Tower right now. That could not be more perfect, right? Like, typically they just throw it at whoever the fuck. But that's not what's happening anymore. And I'm very excited about it. And I think that we have a lot of wonderful adaptations to come. And there's a lot of video games I would love to see that I will be very excited about. None this excited, okay? None of them I will be this excited about. But that BioShock movie that's coming out, right? Stuff like that. I'm so there. Yeah. I'm so ready. And there's stuff that isn't good, but man, this was amazing, and that's that.
Wonderful.
So sorry, just a little tangent there, but I do feel like people take this shit for granted. I do feel like we've become a very spoiled, subculture. This geek fandom, where everyone's bitching about everything and everyone's screaming at each other, and then the internet's a very toxic place. We need to really acknowledge when something is fantastic, and this is that thing.
Yes.
So that's that. I mean, not much more else to say. It's wonderful. We said it enough. I could probably watch it again. We will probably watch it again before next week's episode and pick out a couple more little things. But those are the major things. For now, unless you got anything else to say.
No, I think those are all the major things.
Okay. So what did you guys think? What do you want to see next week? Where do you think it's going to go? Where do you think it's going to end? I think it will end on Tess's demise. I think that we will be introduced to the main Fedra agent, which will be played by Melanie Linsky. Melanie Linsky from Yellow Jackets and Heavenly Creatures. We don't know if she's in charge of Fedra or she's the agent. I'm just guessing that that's what her role is going to be, even though no such character exists in the game. I just think they're going to give Fedra a face that's kind of stalking after them for a little bit until they get out of Boston. Yeah. But that's who's going to have the showdown with Tess, right? They're going to give it a little bit more of a face that Tess has to face down in order to stop, right? They'll probably show what a formidable foe that she is and how, dedicated she is to, tracking these people down. She's going to find out they killed someone outside the quarantine zone. Maybe they'll even find out that they're traveling with something that's of importance. I don't know. But I do think they're going to give a little bit more of a face to Fedra. I think that will be, played by Melanie, and that she's going to be kind of hunting after them. That's where you're going to get that truck that says "run" on the front of the plow and stuff like that. She's going to be, leading the charge, and then Tess and her are going to have a showdown, and Tess could ultimately kill her. Right? They could kill each other. She might have a very short-lived part in this show because Fedra ain't around much, and if they're gonna stick to the story, really stick to it. Fedra ain't going to be around for 1 or 2 more episodes, right? Like, they're going to be moving on, right? We're going to be moving. We're going to get to the cannibals. We're going to get to the what are those guys called? The first guys we run into that
in the city.
Yeah, that have they have a name. I'm totally forgetting it right now. The ones that make them wreck their truck, right? And they're cutting up bodies and stuff. They're not like looters. They're like scavengers, or they have a name. I just can't think of what it is. I wonder if they'll.
It actually is possible that she could be with them though, and not Fedra, because the run truck is from that portion of the game.
True.
So,
but it made it seem like that was
with her.
With Fedra.
It did.
In the trailer because of like the civilians in the back of the truck.
Yeah. Right?
And that's not how that played. But that is kind of how it plays in game 2 with Abby's people. Right. So I don't know. You're right though. She could be part of that group. That would actually make. You know who she could be? Joel reads this letter after they get to that place, after he kills everyone there, and he goes in and they find the bodies. He reads this letter about a crazy woman.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what I was thinking.
And it could be her.
Yeah.
So we might get elaboration on a little bit more about who that crazy woman is. Yeah. So I don't know, but I do think Tess will be dead by the end of episode 2. Yeah. But it's only 50-something minutes long. Could Tess make it to episode 3? Sure.
Maybe, yeah.
I just think she'll probably die, which will give more motivation and will be a good cliffhanger for like, oh shit, she's dead now? I thought for sure she'd be with the rest of the show. If we were going to follow her, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that's my guess for it. Whether or not we'll see Bill, we probably, I don't think we're going to see Bill till episode 3.
Yeah. That's why it's a longer one.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you guys think? Where do you think that this is going to go? Who do you think Melanie Linsky plays? Whatnot? You think, that's that. We've talked enough. Let us know. Bye.
Bye.